Hello people and welcome back to another video. And as you can see on screen, this is going to be a bit different. And this is me addressing another YouTuber who kind of had a problem with my critiquing of Scottish royal dynasty. And to be honest, guys, it's there to be critiqued. We should be critiquing it because there's lots of holes, and we get made to worship these people in modern culture within films like Braveheart and Outlaw King, and people like this guy just perpetuate the lie, and he hangs flags behind him like the lion rampant, which represents the Stuarts, the Bruces, all that rubbish. And on the other side, he's got St Andrews, Saint Andrew, and saints were introduced into Scotland along with the Normans. And this guy has got in his head that the Normans were just like us; they were the same. There are people. He is a Norman. We are Normans, and he's so far from the truth. It's unreal, and I just have to address this with this guy. And he seems to think that Anglo Saxons are the same as Gaels or Celts, or I don't know. I don't know. And it's weird because in his video, which he shows here the composition of the Scotch, which is interesting because I'm going to read a part of Caledonia which talks about where the Scots origins are from and where they thought in the 1800s the Scots were from, and they try to get rid of all the fantastical stories about Scythia and Egyptian queens and princesses, and they try to go right to the root. And it's a lot of stuff they wouldn't like to hear back in 1800s. The fact that the Scots were just Irish, they just migrated from Ireland. That's who the Scots were. But in the 1800s, there's a bit stigma about being Irish, so you'd rather make up a fantastical story. You're from Scythia, the Scots. No, the Scots aren't Irish. They're from Scythia. We came over in these massive Phoenician boats. So you just need to watch for all this crap and really, and it's you need to put your biases aside. And this guy is one of the biggest fanboys for Wallace or the Stuarts or any of these knights, de, these de guys, and the Normans, which he thinks are his relations or something. And the point of my videos is to kind of break down Scottish history and show that these people like Robert the Bruce, the Stuarts, they weren't Scots. They weren't originally Scots. Their families were Normans who were French. They came over here, they dominated the people, they changed the language, they enforced their laws on the people, they enforced their religion, they imposed their power on us, and they changed our culture, they changed us as a people, and now we've got people like him running around actually propagating it and championing it. And people like Wallace and Bruce and the Stuarts were part of this, part of bringing in their own guys, changing the face of Scotland. And the people like us, the Aboriginals, the true Scots, we just got shafted, we got put at the front of battles, we got slaughtered left, right, and centre by these nobles, these so called Scottish nobles, who dragged us onto the battlefields and slaughtered us at will. And this guy seems to champion these guys, and it just kind of annoys me. And I was in his position at one point as well, so I've got to empathise with the guy. I was one of these, William Wallace, Robert the Bruce, but when you're really true to yourself and you break down the bias, you start seeing a different story. You start seeing a struggle between rich nobles from far-flung places, dividing up countries, and the people who are left to die, slaughtered, moved off their lands are the normal citizens who our ancestors were. Mine's and this guy's. But he seems to think he's some kind of royal. Anyway, I'll give you a little listen to him before I get myself worked up. I need to turn the mic around.
Scottish YouTuber Ged Skeptic has made another headache inducing video which is completely misleading and false and frankly ignorant about how like the Wallaces, the Bruces and the Stuarts were really English, Anglo-Norman and all this sort of thing. I thought I would just kind of make this quick video about what a Scot is.
It's only a 7-minute video and he's got a cut already. It's like, you notice the cuts. Watch my videos for cuts, you'll not see any.
By definition now, I've already kind of made a video about the origin of the word Scot.
So he's already made a video about the origin of the word Scot. This is his opinion. So you can go and check out his video. It's called True Scottish History, guys. So if you want to subscribe to him, whatever, he's made about 10 videos about me, so you can check them out if you want. But if he wants a little attention, I'm giving it now. But True Scottish History, just the name of the channel is obnoxious on its own. Just like his face and his flags behind him. When I feel proud, when I feel proud of my country, when I get that sense of pride, it's usually when I'm walking through the green hills and the blue sky and the wildlife around me and the smells, and I'm just so happy to be alive and so proud that I'm on such an amazing land to feel that way. And this is where I get a sense of pride, and I look at my kids playing in this environment, and this is where my pride comes in. It doesn't come from stupid flags like this, kings and queens, Robert the Bruces waving their swords around, telling people what to do, bowing down to popes. Anyway.
You know, how it's actually a Roman racial derogatory name. I'll link that below, and I'll link it also above, so you can go watch that. But, you know, in this video I'm going to be talking about my own ancestral lineage, and hopefully that should clarify things as to you know, what a Scot really is, and like the different components which...
So by him showing us his DNA, he's going to clarify and validate what a Scot is. And he's so far, he doesn't even understand genetics.
Genetically make up the Scottish people, because the Scots are not a homogenous race. You know, in any part of any country you're going to have differences between, for example, Northern Italians and Southern Italians, or Northern Germans and Southern Germans. You know, those from Bavaria, how they're different from those from Saxony, or how Northern French are different from Southern French, etc., etc. You know, you look within any country in the world practically, unless it's incredibly small, but you know, almost every country, it has like differences between different kind of tribal groups going back.
And like Scotland is very small, and the first peoples to populate Scotland were from southern Britain, because the peoples came into Britain, they migrated over to Ireland. That's where you get Irish. The Irish don't like to admit that the first people that probably populated Ireland were from Britain, mainland Britain. And the ones that moved north turned into the Picts. The ones that stayed in England, they were the Britons, the English Britons that eventually got Romanised. So these first wave of people, so you got the Irish, the Picts, and the Britons, and they all came from the same gene pool. They were all ethnically related to some degree.
In time, and Scotland is no exception, because Scotland is an amalgamation of 4 different kingdoms that kind of came together, and those are the kingdoms of the Strathclyde Britons, the Northumbrians, the Picts, and the Dalriada, and also the Gaels as well. In fact, it might be overly simple to say it was only 4 different kingdoms that kind of...
He doesn't like to say Irish. He'll say Dalriada or Gaels, but he'll never say Irish, which is a big mistake, because if you're a Scot, you're Irish in descent, really. At the end of the day, I'm sorry to tell you, bro, I'm practically Irish. I'm 75% Irish, and my dad was Irish. So where does that other 25% come from? My mum was Scottish. It's like, if you dig far enough, we all came from Ireland, the Scots.
And it came together to form the Kingdom of Alba, which would become the Kingdom of Scotland. By the way, Scotland to this day is still a kingdom. You know, it still is the Kingdom of Scotland.
Who's the king? If it's still a kingdom, who's the king? Who's the king of Scotland? Oh, Jesus. Anyway, the guy drones on a bit, so I'll try and skip along, because he is pretty obnoxious, and I may agree a discussion with him in the future about his biasness, but he's got to get rid of this anger and this emotion he has over me for some reason. But I will show you his DNA. So where are we? Right, the guy's 98% Scottish and 2% Welsh. So he's practically a full blown Celt here. And he's trying to claim that the Anglo-Saxons Does he know that Anglo-Saxons were a German people, a Gothic people? They weren't Celts. They weren't the same. Different language, different cultures. And the Normans were the French. They had the different languages as well. So he seems to want to adopt these Norman and Anglo and Scandinavian and all these other people, and he seems to reject his true roots, which is Irish and Scottish, because that's where the Scottish came from, Ireland. Sorry to say. But here he shows you that he's 90% Scottish, and if you look at mine, yeah, I'm 74% Irish, 23% Scottish, and 3%. We're practically the same, me and this guy. But there's no German in there. There's no English. There's no Germanic. There's no Scandinavian. Again, we got invaded by the Vikings. There's no Scandinavian. There's no Norwegian. There's nothing there. So we're both full-blooded Celts, and we should be proud of that. But we should also be aware that our ancestry is being trodden on and imposed upon by these other countries. And I'm not saying today and in a bit, it's just history, it's done now. We're not going to have revenge and get the fucking pitchforks out and charge out for everyone that's an Anglo-Saxon. No, the history's done now. But instead of looking at modern media and culture and propping up these people like Wallace and Bruce, and we've got to really scrutinise them. Properly scrutinise them. And were they for the better of the people? Even look at the Robert the Bruce's brother, Edward, who went over to Ireland and proclaimed himself High King. And that brought much more death and destruction than anybody ever brought to Ireland. You need to check that out. And that's like a microcosm of what that Bruce was doing in Scotland. And the father was de Brass. He was a Norman. He was a Norman. They all got the lands divided. They all imposed their will and powers upon the Scottish people and the English people. And we shouldn't be celebrating these people. We shouldn't be. And he is. He is. So anyway, you can see here genetically, by blood, by saliva, he is a full-blown Celt. He's a Scot. But at the same time, he moves on to talk about his names. And I've got surnames. Everyone's got surnames. Again, you've got grandparents, and they've got grandparents, and they've got grandparents. And if you look far enough, you'll get thousands of surnames. And he goes on to compare his genetic makeup to all his surnames in his family. So we've got Robert History, which I've got a Robertson surname as well in my family. We've got Hunter. And he recommends this House of Names. And I'm sorry to break it to you again, buddy, but this House of Names is a big fraud. It's just to sell. Look, 1450 down to, it's not 1450, it's half price, 725. McClung History. Throw any surname, make up a surname, throw it at them, they'll give you a crest, a coat of arms. You need to look at it in a coat of arms. Only Normans and that class of people were allowed coats of arms. And even if you were a Douglas and you got coat of arms, that didn't necessarily mean anyone with the surname Douglas could wear that coat of arms. Only that family that was granted that coat of arms could wear that coat of arms. So this is a load of crap. This is a load of fraud, this House of Names. This is garbage, which he's comparing to his ancestry, which could also be garbage. It could also be garbage, because they've got access to all your records. They could just go through all your records and find that there's no foreigners in your records. So bingo, and you're Scottish. You know what I mean? It's like I'm even questioning ancestry. But this guy here seems to think because he can go through all the House of Names, it's a fraud, mate. It's a fraud. I'm sorry to break it to you. And you go, and the thing is about surnames is a very new in history. They're 1,000 years old. That's when they wanted to tax people. And the surnames really came into force with the Normans once again, when they wanted to tax people, so they gave you a surname. And sometimes your surname you took for the occupation you'd done. If you're a tailor, you're called John Taylor. If you lived near a lake or a red lake, you're called John Red Lake. Kind of surnames are ambiguous, especially if you want to really go back before the Normans, before all that. But he seems to want to use all this coat of arms crap, and this is where he gets his pride for this crap, this utter crap. And if you want to find it, you'll find stuff to push up this crap and make it seem like the best thing since sliced bread if you're Scottish. But if you dig deep enough, You'll find discrepancies everywhere. And these people, these Frasers, these Rossies, these so-called... Anyway, I'll let him have the last wee bit. I can't remember what he's saying here.
And type in your parents' surnames and your grandparents' surnames and even of your own family origin. So if you want to look at the history even of your own family origins, I recommend looking at the website houseofnames.com and type in your parents' surnames and your grandparents' surnames and see what comes up. You might find Anglo-Saxon, you might find Gaelic, you might find Anglo-Norman, Dalriadan, Strathclyde Breton. I mean, I did, and I'm 98% Scottish, and I've got Norman blood, I've got Strathclyde Breton blood, I've got Anglo-Saxon blood. You have to...
He's 98% Scottish and he's got Anglo-Saxon blood. What an idiot. He's not realised that Anglo-Saxons were Germanic, so he's not got their blood. Because it would come up in DNA, it would come up in ancestry. He would have like a party like Holland and maybe Belgium and France. He'd have that because that's where they came from. You know what I mean? Because they're Saxons. They came from the Flemish areas and he says I don't know. He says I'm frustrating to listen to, but this guy, he's got lots of problems. He's got an issue with me because he makes lots of videos about. I don't know, guys. Maybe you should go over and subscribe to him, and maybe if you enjoy this back and forth. But I'm not going to waste my time really with this guy anymore. To be honest with you, I want to move on with this book because I've got a really good bit that he'd enjoy called "The Origin of the Scots." And I've read this book, guys. I've already read it, and I just think to myself, this book is too good to just lay there. And it's from the 1800s, so there's been 200 years of crap flapped on top of it. But he managed back in their times to try and scrape away all the crap and the nonsense, the myths, try to go through all the ancient documents and try his best. I'm talking about George, what's his name? George, what's the author's name again? I'll come back to me. Anyway, George Chalmers. And I think he done the best in his ability to try and find the truth about the origins of all these people. And he's coming to the same sort of conclusions about the Stuarts and the Walters and all these Bruceys and these type of people. They weren't in it for the people. They were into force their will on the population that were there, and they were forcing them. It was a genocide. They were genociding these people, the Gaelic people. They were getting rid of their language. They were getting rid of the land. They were taking over the land, their language, their chiefs, getting rid of all their nobility. It was a genocide, a massive genocide by these Normans and Anglo-Normans. And this guy puts them up on pedestals, when really he should take off his William Wallace Brucey sunglasses and try and see the truth here. Anyway, guys, I know it was a bit a weird video. And a lot of people say rise above it and just ignore this guy, but he has made about a dozen videos, and I think I should show him a bit of respect and kind of reply. But this is his kind of idea about history and true Scottish history, and I'll give you my opinion what makes a Scot. Anyway, have a good night, people, and take care.